Welcome to DeereFacts, hosted by Willie Cade.
Hello, my name's Willie Cade. I'm the host of DeereFacts, a video blog. My hope is to educate farmers and ranchers about their equipment that they own so that it doesn't own them. My grandfather had 158 patents in the agricultural industry. 31 of them were on the manure spreader. While he applied his genius to those patents, I'm not going to stand behind those 31 patents. Just a joke. Let's get a little serious now. I want to talk today about payload files. This is those kind of cryptic, unknown pieces of software that John Deere service advisors need to hook their computers up to deliver to your tractors to make some sense. But what is a payload file, really? So we're going to go into some depths with it. But first, let's do a little bit of work trying to understand what these machines are in terms of both the physical device, but more importantly for this conversation, what's the software environment like? So let's take an X9 1100. It's got 36 controllers, or about 36 controllers, and it's got around 325 sensors throughout the system. Now, the difference between a controller and a sensor, a controller has some logic and can make some decisions and kind of manages this set of sensors. These sensors have or a measure of a certain thing, whether it's moisture or rotation or temperature. Those are the kinds of things that it gives the information back to the controller. And then in the controller, they can make some decisions. Now, remember, there's 2 or 3 dozen controllers in any particular device. So the X9, let's call it 30 plus controllers. So all of those controllers are connected to one another through what's known as a bus, or it's just a way that the information can get transferred digitally from controller to controller to controller, and then that information is passed around and it is used. Sometimes a controller will send information to another controller saying, here, let's make this decision, or let's do that, let's do this. But remember, the digital logic is always a preset set of decisions that are made when the controllers or when the environment gives you certain inputs. So that's what the controllers do. The controllers take that information from the sensors, and that is what runs the machines. Let's talk about 9RT570. Huge tractor, beautiful machine. That's got about 30 controllers too. And interestingly enough, not just like 300 controllers with the sensor, with the X9, it's got about almost 600 sensors. Huge number of sensors. So those controllers need software. They need to have those decisions. And since software is never made perfectly the first time, you've got to be able to update it, change it, and allow for things to progress in time. So you've got to be able to deliver that new set of machine instructions to the controllers. And so that's where the payload file comes in. And let's talk a little bit about what a payload file actually looks like. So I'm going to do kind of a conceptual understanding of what the payload file is. I'm not going to say that what I'm presenting to you is 100% accurate the way it's all done. That's not useful here. What's useful is to get the kind of idea, if you will, the gestalt of what a payload file is. So first thing that I want to do is I want to show you, and we'll put it up on the screen. I want to show you what a payload file looks like if you just open it up in a text reader like Notepad on your computer. And it looks very, very strange in terms of the language. It's like, what is that? Is it Chinese? Is it Arabic? Well, what you're seeing is an encrypted file. It is a coded file that you can read only if you have the proper authority or the proper key to do it. It's like the lock on your door. If you don't have the key to get in the door, you ain't getting in the house. You can't figure out what's going on. So first we want to understand that there's that encryption. And that's a very important piece here, and I'll come back to it a little later. The next thing that I want to show you is the actual machine language. It's the ones and zeros that everybody's most people are familiar with when we talk about computer codes and how to talk to computers. So it's 100011100001. I can't read it. I don't know what it says. That's not my language. It would be like someone talking to me in Urdu. I don't know. So, okay, great. But the machine needs that to do all the things that it's been designed to do. And so that's one element of the payload file. And then the next element of the payload file is the serial numbers of the machine it's going into, but also some of the parts. So individual parts can have serial numbers. And this is really important because the software inside the controllers that's running around this network on the bus, it now knows not only the whole environment it's working in, the machine serial number, but it knows a bunch of serial numbers of different parts around there. And that will become important a little bit later to understand that. And then you add into that payload file, you add in some logic, some decisions that the payload file needs to use. Like this piece of information or this payload file, it needs to go to this controller, and is it in this kind of machine, and all of the decisions to make sure that it gets properly delivered to the right place at the right time. And then you got to put a header on it. You got to say, okay, what kind of controller is this? Is this an ARM controller? Is this an engine controller? What kind is it? Now, interestingly enough, teeny tiny payload files are, when you print them out, are 40 pages, maybe 80 pages. When you take the really big ones, like the engine control unit, that could be 800 pages. So there's lots of variety in these things. And because there's that variety, we need a little bit, at the beginning, we need to say, what is this? So that when the payload file is delivered to the laptop of the technician from John Deere, they know how to process it and what to do with it and those kind of things. Now, once you get all of that kind of put together into a big long list, then what you do is you put a big encryption code all the way around it. And that says nobody can look at it except who has the keys. Okay? So that's a really important thing to understand about payload files. Now, why am I talking about payload files? What has this got to do with me repairing my computer? Well, sometimes, let's say a moisture meter, for example. When you need to replace a moisture meter on your combine, you need to replace the payload file. Now, I want to be careful here not to say anything always needs to do this or that or those kind of things, but give me a little bit of leeway here and say, okay, when I need a payload file to replace my moisture meter, okay, I take the old one out. Oh yeah, the wire, it looks like it's all melted and it's not what I need anymore. And I go get a new one, and it finally comes, from the mailer. And I go ahead and I install it, and I go, oh great, I'm all done. The moisture meter's there. Nope. Now I got to call the dealer technician. I got to call the dealer technician, and I got to say, I need a payload file. Here's my serial number. Here's the serial number of the new moisture meter that I put in. Will you call John Deere and have John Deere, from the records they have in their computer, put together the payload files, all of those little things that need to happen, stack them up, if you will. And that's why we call, by the way, a lot of software, we call it a software stack. So we got a stack of software, and John Deere will go, okay, great. Yep. Here's what you need. And here's all those kinds of things. And then they'll wrap it up in a nice encrypted package. They'll send it electronically to the technician's laptop. And then once it gets to the laptop, the technician pushes the button, and a whole bunch of things start to happen, which we don't really know what happens, because nobody's ever, well, not nobody, but none of us owners of equipment have ever really seen that kind of work. So we don't know what's going on inside there. But somehow there's a translation of that payload file. It's all the information in it is used. It's transferred to the equipment, in this case a tractor or a combine, and all the logic runs through. Everything goes check, all done, successfully done. You go in and you turn it on, and your moisture meter is now working. The thing that's really important to understand here is that the payload file has to come from John Deere, not the dealer. The dealer doesn't have the ability to create a payload file. Though it looks like the dealer technician is fixing the machine, they only can do it if they get the proper information from John Deere. So that's incredibly important to understand in this little process. And so be aware that sometimes your delays are a function of, oh, wait, the technician forgot to send the information to John Deere necessary to create the new payload file. And so, oh, great, they're going to have to do it. Or, gee, I need another piece of information because I don't have everything. Those kinds of things can start to happen. And as I'm sure you're aware, that builds and builds in the frustration process. One of the things so that's what a payload file is. And I know that it seems like, well, why did he go into it? I'm going into it in the kind of detail that I am conceptually, yes, but I'm going into it because I want you to understand that the software, how important the software is to make that repair fully functional. And without the software, in special cases, that is, your repair is not going to be complete. And if you can't complete the repair, the error code that is inhibiting the machine running may not clear. And I use may not because it all depends on the error code and all those kinds of things. But in annoyingly too many situations, let's just say it that way. Okay, and I want to share with you another wonderful email that I got from someone about this work. I'm going to call her Jane. Her real name isn't Jane. And the voice you hear isn't going to be her real voice. It's going to be a synthetic voice. But what I think is that it's important to understand in this conversation is her sentiment is very, very useful to have, very useful to know.
I want to say thank you for your work, not because I'm a U.S. farmer, I'm not. But the policy that is made in the US trickles down on so many other countries. Your work is probably more important than you even realize.
Those, in my mind, are very important words. And I thank Jane for sending to me and letting me know how important this is to her. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now, I also want you to know that you're not getting the straight scoop from people who talk for John Deere. Recently, Bloomberg did a nice video story about John Deere, and the last half of it was about right to repair. I'll put the link down below. I think it's really important for people kind of to watch the whole thing. I thought Senator Brandt was particularly good in explaining his point of view and why he's bringing this legislation forward in Nebraska. And in about the 14-minute mark, the CTO of John Deere, the Chief Technology Officer, the guy who's like the leader of all this technology stuff, his name is Jamie Hindman, and he erroneously compares the complexity of the tractors to jet airplanes. And I gotta laugh a little bit because I got an email from a guy who actually works on jet airplanes. And he said, oh my God, we would never try to fix jet airplanes unless we had the documentation. We need the documentation. We, the owners of those airplanes, need that documentation. And so it was kind of a funny, maybe even sad analogy there. The analogy I like to use that I think is more apt is 18-wheeler trucks that go over the road. This kind of information about payloads and all that stuff isn't encrypted. The information is out there. Independent service providers and owners can do their own maintenance. And quite frankly, there's a whole lot more trucks I'm driving by on the highway than I am combines, even when I'm in rural Nebraska. So this is the point in my videos where I want you to act. So we're going to talk about the how you can take action. I think you know that you should, and I hope I don't have to say that over and over again, but please take some action. Go to the repair.org website. And then if you scroll down, you'll see the heading Stand Up. Click on the button there, select the state you're in. I'm going to select Nebraska and fill in your information. So my information is Willie Cade, williecade@gmail.com. And the address I'm going to use here is 103 North Jefferson Avenue, Plymouth, and of course it's Nebraska, 68434. And then I'm going to say, okay, great, I got all that information in. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click over and I'm going to write in my own words why I think right to repair is important. So I'm going to, and this software will direct your communication to your representatives in your state. And so where I'm going to do my letter is going to go directly to Senator Brandt, and I'm going to say, Senator Brandt, thank you for the work that you're doing on LB 543. I appreciate it. I hope you get it passed soon. Next time, I'm going to talk to you about FUD. FUD, F-U-D. Not mud, but FUD. I know most farmers talk about mud, but this is FUD, which stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And if you start to listen to all the arguments that are presented on why people shouldn't be able to fix the things that they own, that they're owners of, that should be the purview or the responsibility or the exclusive rights to the manufacturer, you'll hear they're either going to talk about something that you should be afraid of, or that somehow it's not going to work out right, or gee, maybe you don't know enough and, we're smarter than you are. And so, just let us do it because you couldn't do it. And how that is really a false and misleading representation of the situation. And remember, the Deere logo is jumping to the right because we're right on this issue. Thank you very much.